Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today I have a solo episode and I want to dive into my 5 pillars of a body recomp. And I think this is important because a lot of times when people think about a body recomp, they usually just overly focus on the training and the nutrition side, and or they just think it's a certain calorie amount, or they just think, hey, I just need to train. And it goes a lot deeper than that. While that is a huge part and probably the most important piece of it all, people often neglect the other aspects of. So I want to go over how we focus on the big picture and how all of these tie in to each other. And if anyone is lacking, it is going to impact your results. And so real quick, I want to go over first, obviously, the main thing, the big thing with body recomp, right? So again, we are decreasing body fat percentage, increasing muscle is obviously the look side of things, but it is more than just that, right? It's going to be, you're going to be in better health. You're going to feel better. You're not going to have those energy crashes. You're going to be able to put everything into your work. You're going to have higher quality work. You're going to have better cognitive function. You're going to have better energy to be with your kids, to do things on the weekends and not feel so tired and like you're dragging all the time. And so again, body recomp is more than just a look, but obviously the look is the nice thing. And then we're also setting you up for health long-term. Again, I think that this is something that I feel like is becoming more and more popular, is this kind of longevity, long-term health span, lifespan, whatever you want to call it. And again, I think when we focus on a body recomp, it sets us up for that as well. So we're not only improving now, but we're also improving long term. Whereas your typical kind of weight loss, diet, stuff like that, I just feel like they're very short term and short thinking with how we go about it. And then also even, let's take even like physique kind of world, bodybuilding, stuff like that. Again, people can do what they want, but I also think that, is that the best long term as well? Maybe not. But again, I'm not saying that it's not, it's just there's trade-offs with that. And I want to go over the benefits of kind of your body composition and why. Obviously scale weight is important, but what that is made up of and why it's so important. So first, we have metabolic health risks. So when we have too much fat, we obviously have excess body fat, probably more visceral fat than what we would ideally want, especially depending on what your habits are. But usually habits that get you there are the things that are going to increase visceral fat, obviously increase the risk of insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease. Fat is also hormonally active and it can produce inflammatory markers. So this can contribute to chronic inflammation and metabolic dysfunction, right? So just having too much body fat can lead to all these issues. And again, what are the things that get us to have too much body fat? It's usually our habits, right? It's usually poor circadian health, sleep hygiene, it's high stress, and then that compounds into you consuming highly palatable, tasty foods, which leads to an increased risk of calorie surplus. And then if you're not exercising on top of it, we're going to be missing out on muscle, right? Which can offset some of this stuff. And I'll talk about how too little muscle can also impact all this, right? And then it's this vicious cycle. Now you have too much body fat, you start to maybe not feel as good, you're sluggish. Again, we have higher levels of inflammation, which is going to impact how you feel throughout the day and all the time in general. And then our hunger out of whack. And so it can just be but then also at the same time, too little muscle can also be an issue as well too. And first is it's a key site for glucose storage, so glycogen. So less muscle means less capacity to manage blood sugar effectively, increasing the risk of insulin resistance, which in turn is going to increase the risk of visceral fat accumulation and all these other things that we just talked about. Muscle also acts as a metabolic, quote unquote, it burns calories even at rest. It's not a huge amount, but it will still burn calories at rest. And so your resting metabolic rate can decrease in this process. And the other cool thing here is, yes, it doesn't, for every little bit of muscle, it doesn't burn a ton of extra calories at rest, but we also have to think about how that translates to everyday movement, right? Where if you're burning a little bit more at rest, but then also your body utilizes the energy you give it better because you have more muscle. These are all things that compound on top of each other over time. We also have the physical function side of things. So too much fat can reduce mobility, joint health, and overall physical endurance, just making everyday tasks more challenging. It puts extra strain on the heart, joints, and respiratory system, increasing the risk of injuries or chronic pain. Too little muscle can reduce strength and muscle mass, which obviously muscle mass, and it can lead to a decline in physical function, balance, and coordination, especially as you age. It's also critical for maintaining posture, injury prevention, and the ability to perform basic and complex movements. Obviously, when we talk longevity and aging, too much fat is usually going to lead to high levels of visceral fat, and that's associated with shorter life expectancy due to the increased risk of chronic diseases. Too little muscle, we obviously have sarcopenia, which is an age-related muscle loss. It's a major predictor of frailty, not fertility, frailty and loss of independence in older adults. And muscle is a critical reserve for amino acids, which your body uses during times of illness or stress. So that's the long-term aspect of it. Then we have hormonal and cognitive impact. So too much fat, excess fat can disrupt hormonal balance, including testosterone and estrogen, which negatively affects your mood, energy, and sexual health. Visceral fat is linked to higher levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, which can impair cognitive function over time. Too little muscle, it also contributes to hormone regulation as well, right? Including insulin sensitivity and testosterone production. Again, those are probably go hand in hand, but more body fat, less muscle is usually going to lead to less testosterone. Less muscle mass can reduce your overall energy levels and cognitive sharpness due to decreased physical resilience, right? So that's more of an indirect aspect of it. Appearance and confidence, right? Too much fat beyond health, it can affect how people feel about their appearance, leading to lower self-esteem and confidence. And too little muscle, lack of muscle tone often leads to a quote unquote soft look, even if body fat levels aren't excessively high. And building muscle contributes to a more athletic, strong, and sculpted appearance, which many people associate with confidence and vitality. Again, that's not a for sure thing, but anecdotally and just from what I hear from other people, like adding muscle definitely increases your confidence, right? Disease resistance and recovery. So too much fat, obesity is linked to poor immune function, making it harder to fight infections and recover from illnesses. Higher fat levels increase surgical complications and recovery time. In terms of too little muscle is crucial for recovery after illness, injury, or surgery. Without muscle mass, recovery is going to be slower and less effective. And then lastly, energy and quality of life. Excess fat can lead to fatigue and reduced stamina, making it harder to stay active and enjoy life fully. Too little muscle. Muscle provides the strength and endurance needed for active lifestyle. Without it, daily tasks can feel exhausting. I want us to go over those because, again, I think it's super important that in this process of getting into your health and fitness, like your body composition is super important. And it can be like, okay, what if I'm stuck in this where I have higher body fat and lower muscle? It comes down to our methods, right? Usually people in that are typically going to crash diet, do things that aren't great for anything past 3 to 4 weeks. Like you might lose some weight and then you come back to it. Now, people that are very overweight and have a lot of body fat, I think if they don't necessarily have to do a ton of weight training, but we still want to try to preserve some lean body mass on the way down, right? That's still going to be super important there. But you have these people where, again, maybe you're someone who you don't really have a ton of weight to lose, but from a body composition standpoint, you have higher levels of body fat and then you have less muscle. For you, again, it really is going to come down to that approach and how we go about it. A crash diet's not going to be the thing there. And then also people neglect the lifestyle side of things, and that plays a huge role in our body composition in terms of things that we do outside. So that's why I wanted to bring this up today, is to go over those 5 pillars, right? And so just real quick, a couple misconceptions about body recomp is I think people think it's the simultaneous fat loss and muscle gain, which that can be part of it. But to me, body recomp is over the long period of time, we are decreasing body fat percentage and increasing muscle mass. So it's that combination. And usually those two go hand in hand. You increase your muscle mass, you're probably going to decrease your body fat percentage. But the key, again, is also in that process, we're limiting body fat gain because we know that's not something we want. Now, somebody will hear this and then now they'll never fuel themselves enough to build muscle. And that's obviously not what we want either in that process. These are all levels of body fat here, right? For men, if you're at 15 to 20% or higher, you probably need to drop some body fat. If you're at 10 to 15% and you want to continue to build more muscle, you might have to gain a little bit of body fat in that process. For women, again, if you're over 30% body fat, you probably want to lose at least a little bit of body fat in that process. Whereas if you're a woman and you're somewhere between 20, 25, 22 to 27-ish, somewhere around that range, again, we don't want to get too caught up in these exact numbers. You gaining a little bit of body fat to add some lean mass could be part of the process in order to add some more muscle. And ultimately, we just figure out what the best, and this is going to come into the 5 pillars, what is the best option there. So I think for me, the big misconception is that it's automatically this simultaneous fat loss and muscle gain, which that is what people portray it as, and that can happen. But again, this is on a spectrum here. And again, I have my 2 types of body recomp, which would be your fat loss recomp and your building recomp. And each of those are going to be just a little bit different. If you listen to episode 529, I dive into those 2 paths there. All right. So what I want to go over now are the 5 pillars. Okay. So what makes up this body recomp? What are the things that we need to focus on? So pillar 1 for me is your training. And here's the thing. This isn't just working out. If we really want to change our body composition, our training needs to be specific. Okay. And if we, again, really want to make there are some things that we need to focus on. Okay. So for me, and what we'll do in my body recomp blueprint program is, again, from a workout perspective, ideally, our weight training would be anywhere from 3 to 5 days per week. And it's focused on adding muscle. Yes, adding some strength, but for the most part, we're going to spend most of our training in that like 6 to 15 rep range. Okay. So that's what the weight training side of things will look like. Again, we obviously want it to be based on progressive overload. Like we're trying to progress. We're not just going into the gym and just lifting to just lift and just, oh, hey, you know what? Today I feel like doing arms. Again, that is something that may work for a short period of time, but if we really want to continue to add muscle, we need to make sure we're providing progressive overload. My thought on this is I talk to a lot of people on Instagram, just, hey, what are your goals? And a lot of times it's just, oh, I'm just maintaining, I'm just going into the gym, I don't really have a goal. And it's just, okay, that's cool, that's great, you're exercising, that's awesome, but why would you dedicate all this time and you're just okay with things just like to me, I can't understand that. And so again, when it comes to the training side of things, we need to make sure that we focus on progressive overload in our training. Okay. And so within that, again, 3 to 5 days seems to be best. At a minimum, we're doing about 5 to 10 sets per week per muscle group there, and we're hitting each muscle group about twice a week. Okay, that's generally what it looks like, and we want to make sure we're most of the time training relatively close to failure. We don't have to go to absolute failure, but again, in our training, we want to make sure that we're getting close to it. And again, I can get this through form videos and whatnot there. And then the other side of it is your cardio training. Okay. So this is one that I've really added in and really tried to fine tune and get people dialed in on this. And that's doing some form of cardiovascular training fitness, right? So what it will typically look like is ideally we're doing anywhere from 1 to 3 sessions, ideally 2, but 1 to 3 per week. And again, we're trying to do some that maybe 1 session per week is where we're maybe a little bit more interval style, where we're getting that heart rate up. It's not like a 1 minute or sprints or something like that. We're looking at 3 to 5 minutes of pushing it, taking a rest, doing that for multiple intervals. And then we're doing at least 1 to 2 days. The rest of our cardio that we're doing is that longer duration, just slower, lower intensity. Again, people will call it zone 2, whatever it is. It's just lower intensity cardio, right? Where you're just getting your heart rate up, not too high, but you're getting it up for extended periods of time. And that can really build a good aerobic base, which most people lack, especially if you come from like a weight training background or you just are sedentary, right? So we're also incorporating that into it. And to me, and then obviously doing some mobility, whether you want to do yoga, whatever it may be, getting some form of mobility built in there. But if we properly weight train, to me, that is enough stimulus to now, if you need a little bit of extra, and this is where focusing on the client at hand is super important, then maybe, and you have the time and you want to do it, then maybe we focus a little bit more on mobility side of things with that. And so those are, from a workout perspective, those are the main things that we are looking at. Again, the biggest mistake I see people make here is they just go in and work out. They don't have a game plan. There's no system in place. They just work out or they train, but it's not geared towards building muscle. It's just high intensity type stuff with just trying to get your heart rate as high as possible. That's the biggest mistake I see people make here on the workout side of things. But most people that listen to this and most people that come to me already have been working out. It's not like they're not working out. They're just, again, just don't really have a game plan that's not geared towards the right stimulus, and it's just random with no form of progression, right? And that's going to be something that's going to hurt your body composition. Again, initially it's going to work, but after a while you're going to be working, you're going to be putting in the time, and that's frustrating there. But, and this piece is important because this is at the base of, this is what's going to send that adaptation to change your body, right? Again, we have to weight train to build muscle. We talk about the importance of muscle. So again, we want to make sure we do things to add muscle. And again, as efficiently as we can. Again, you could be doing things that aren't that great geared towards building muscle, and you build a little bit, but it is going to slow down, and then you're just going to feel like you're spinning your wheels. And then from the cardio standpoint, again, like one, it does help burn more calories, which can be helpful from like a staying leaner, help with fat loss, etc. But also just from a cardiovascular health standpoint, right? The benefits of that are just, to me, undeniable. And it also can help with your weight training. It can help with recovery, help with energy throughout the day. So again, it's just super important that we also do that. Okay, so pillar 2 we have is nutrition. Now, again, this is obviously super important because if we're just weight training, that's great. You're exercising, you're doing your cardio, that you're going to see some great changes there with that. But if we're lacking on the nutrition side, we're not going to fully get to where we want with this. So again, to come back to this, so again, maybe you're working out, like that's great, but maybe you lack a little bit on the workout side, and that can improve. Again, that's going to allow you to see better results quicker and more efficient results. But let's say maybe for you, then nutrition's something that really lacks. You don't really have any focus on nutrition. Again, you're going to be limited in terms of how far we can go with things if we're not having some sort of moderation with nutrition or some structure around nutrition. This doesn't mean you have to absolutely track your calories, track every last gram. The more we can do, the better. Obviously, the more information we can get, the better decision making we can make. At least initially, it's great kind of tracking, a great tool, but you don't necessarily have to do that long term. And again, with the nutrition, this is important because the energy balance we're in is going to be super important. So if we're eating too many calories over time, that's going to put our body into an energy surplus. And so it's going to be like, hey, we need to store energy. And for weight training in that process, we're probably going to be building some lean body mass, but we're not going to be dropping body fat in that process. So again, and then if, then we have maintenance calories, and then we have a negative energy balance, calorie deficit. So this is why the nutrition side is important. You can only get so far with exercise. And then the day, if we don't have any control of our nutrition, it's going to be out of whack. But then we also have our macros too. Okay. So the calories we eat are important, but then our macros are also important, because if we're not eating enough protein, we're not going to see as much adaptation as we could if we were also eating protein with lifting weights and doing things like that. Right. So protein is also super important in this process, but then we have carbs and fats. Those are also very important as well too. We need a minimum amount of fats. Carbs, we can vary based on our activity levels and obviously what phase we're in, whether we're trying to maybe be a little bit more fat loss focused. Again, that's usually going to come with a little bit lower carbohydrate intake. I actually just dropped an episode on carbs. Should they be higher or lower? That's episode 543 if you want to listen to that. But also nutrition is important in terms of the food quality that we have too, right? Like poor diet quality, if we have the standard American diet, is going to lead to higher levels of inflammation. It can lead to maybe a little bit more visceral fat accumulation, especially if we're in that positive energy balance. And it can just impact your gut health, which can impact how you feel, can impact our sleep. It can also impact how you're able to push yourself in your training, how you recover, just how you feel. So again, it's your calories, it's your macros, but it's also the food quality that we have as well too, right? Making sure we get in enough micronutrients so our body feels and performs its best, making sure we get in enough fiber, right? These are all things that are super important. And again, if nutrition is lacking, it is going to impact other aspects of your body recomp. So pillar 3 to me is your movements outside of the gym. Okay. So yes, we have our dedicated exercise, we have our nutrition, but we also need to make sure we're staying active outside of the gym. One, this is just going to help increase your overall caloric expenditure throughout the day. It's going to help with gut health. It's going to help with insulin sensitivity, which is how your body utilizes the energy you give it. It can help with recovery. And again, NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, again, is very variable, and it can make up a huge chunk of your energy expended throughout the day. And just, again, from an overall health standpoint, extended periods of time being sedentary are not great for long-term health either. And just from a cognitive standpoint, getting up and getting moving is also super important throughout the day, and it can help with that. So I just see too many people that they just go and work out really hard for 1 hour, 3-4 times a week, or maybe a little bit more, and then they're done. And again, we're missing out here for not also getting some movement outside of the gym. I personally like to have clients get about 6 to 10K steps per day. Maybe the days you don't do cardio, you're a little bit higher. Days that you do cardio, maybe you're a little bit lower there. But the main takeaway is we want to get some activity outside of the gym. This is a very underrated tool here that when a lot of clients come to me is fairly low. Now, you will have some clients that they get 10, 15,000 steps per day. It's okay for you. We don't need to increase that. You're already at a good point. And, or somebody who has a job that is just very active, right? Like those types of people, they don't necessarily need to increase their movement. They already do it naturally. So that's pillar 3. And that's just your movement outside of the gym. Pillar 4 is our lifestyle. Okay. And this is huge. So 3, 4, and 5 are the ones that people commonly neglect. 4 and 5 more so than 3, because again, movement is part of physical activity. So people that generally enjoy fitness, they're doing the first 3. But where I see most people, even people who are working hard in the gym, they miss out on the lifestyle. So to me, lifestyle is everything that we do outside of the gym. It's our sleep, it's our stress management, it's the things the people that we engage with, it's our environment. This is the part where this is usually a big mess for a lot of people. And again, it's not necessarily just. It's not always one of them, or it's not always all of them. It's usually at least 1 or 2, right? So again, stress in itself, too high levels of stress all the time are going to impact your ability to, and I guess real quick with these ones, they're going to impact how quickly we can see results. And then they're going to impact how easy it is to stick to the first 3 as well too. So for example, stress is super high. One, we're going to be an increased risk of gaining fat, particularly around our midsection, which would be visceral fat, right? So there's that. But then also high stress really zaps your willpower. You're probably not able to push your training as hard, and you're probably going to want more tasty foods, right? So that's how it can impact your body comp. And again, you're probably not going to have the same like adaptation from a muscle building standpoint either if stress is super high. Now, this doesn't mean we don't want any stress in our lives. We do want some, but we want it to be good stressors, and we want to be able to have healthy ways to manage that stress. You getting upset at social media at 10 o'clock at night, that's not a healthy stressor, right? That is a poor stressor, and now it's going to impact sleep, and now you're going to be upset. And again, that's a vicious cycle. So again, we want to have stress because again, even exercise is a stressor on the body. A calorie deficit is a stressor on the body. You're trying to change your body. That's a stressor on the body. But these can be good stressors, but we just need to make sure we manage our overall stress load. And we also want to have healthy ways to manage it, right? So we don't want to have too much, but we also want to be able to manage it better. And so then that way we have that sweet spot, because again, if that's too high and we don't have healthy ways to manage it, we're getting stressed at everything. That obviously makes everything else worse. And then you have this like lower recovery capacity at that point. Then we have sleep. Again, this is a huge one. To me, sleep is, yes, the time you're spent sleeping, but also your circadian rhythm health as well too, because if your circadian rhythm is off, that is going to impact your body's ability to change, right? It's going to impact your hormones. It's going to impact how you feel. It's going to impact, how you recover. To me, sleep is this kind of all day thing. It's not just, oh, hey, I need to get to bed by 8 o'clock and get 10 hours of sleep. No, we want to make sure that we be careful with stimulants too close to bed. We want to make sure that we get into a good wind down routine. We want to make sure that we keep the room nice and dark and cool. We want to things like that. Like those are the things we want to do, because too many times I think people think of sleep as, oh, hey, I just need to sleep for 10 hours. And then they go into bed without a sleep routine, and now they're tossing and turning, and then they're looking at their phone. And then now they get this association with sleep and that they're not a good sleeper. And then that leads to this vicious cycle. So again, sleep is more than just the time that you go to sleep. It's everything you do throughout the day. And then we also have our environment, right? Like the environment we are in is super important. So people we hang out with, these are all things. If our core group of friends are people who like to go out to eat all the time, and then they also like to drink alcohol all the time, like for you, that's going to be very challenging to manage that. It's not saying get rid of those friends, but it's maybe we need to be a little bit, we either have to improve our methods when we're with them, or we need to find ways to reduce that frequency. But again, your environment is huge. It can either be conducive or it could pull you further away. So your environment. So figuring out ways to make your environment more conducive to what we do. Another one that's probably a little bit lower on the priority list, but also endocrine disrupting chemicals, right? So EDCs, things like plastics, stuff like that, like being careful with maybe not having your meal prep containers be plastic, right? Like small things like that, using certain products. These are things that to me, that's a little bit more advanced, but there is some truth to it. And so those would be things that we'd want to look out for. And so again, the lifestyle side is super important. It's going to impact you. And this is where most people overlook things. And really it just makes, if this is out of whack, it just makes everything tougher to do, right? You have to work a little bit harder to see a change. That in itself leads to burnout, right? So this is a common thing that you see is maybe people's lifestyles are out of whack. And so now they feel like they have to eat 800 calories to lose weight. And they also have to exercise 8 hours out of the day. And so then they do that, but they can only sustain that for a short period of time. And then they go back. So again, if we don't have this in place, you're going to struggle, right? So again, this would be something that in 2025, I think you should really focus on there, making sure that's in a good spot. And look, no matter who you are, there's at least 2 to 3 things that we could do better here. If you're someone that just goes, oh, I'm good there on that, I challenge you to rethink that. And I guarantee you there's at least 2 to 3 things that you can improve with that. And the last pillar is mindset, right? So mindset mastery. Again, if we don't have the right mindset, we're going to struggle. Okay. So hey, how do we handle setbacks? How do we handle failures? How do we handle tough environments? How do we talk to ourselves? Like the all or nothing mindset. Again, if we don't have a great mindset, it's going to hold us back because again, there's going to be challenges along the way. There's going to be things that maybe don't go your way, and it's how you handle those. So again, we have to patience. That's another one. Focusing on outcomes and not processes. Celebrating small wins, right? Building resilience. These are all things that we need to look at. And like within this, it's hey, what's the biggest thing from a client that they need? So those are the 5 pillars. And so again, we don't have to be perfect with every single one, okay? But just understand that the more one lacks, the more it's going to hold you back in general. And so I think when I get a new client, we're looking at this and it's okay, what's the one that we need to spend the most time on? Because let's say, for example, I have a client that they're really good at their training. They train 4 times a week. They track all their calories and macros. So for them, it's like they have a really good base, but they're not seeing the results. Saying, well, then we're going to look at their lifestyle. Is it something there? Nutrition, could we maybe improve our diet quality, right? Or maybe it's their mindset. Maybe they just go all or nothing with it. It's like they just do it for 6 weeks at a time. They track everything. They push their training, but then they keep falling off. Again, that needs to be the thing that we work on. We need to find strategies that help them improve. That's always going to end up being a limiting factor with him. I have a client that I've been working with for over a year now, and he is someone who was overweight. He wanted to drop some weight, and he did a ton of cardio. So he had part of the training down, but we needed to improve the training. But for him, the big limiting factors were his mindset and his nutrition and improving the workout. So again, there's usually going to be a couple things we need to work on, but there's always that one big one. And for him, it's that mindset. And we've worked on the workouts, like those are nailed down now. And we got that. His nutrition continues to get better, but his mindset continues to be something that holds him back because again, he still has this kind of all or nothing thinking there. Again, it really just depends on the specific client and what they need there. That's why, again, this is why with my body recomp blueprint, it's more than just your workouts. Yes, those are super important and it's more than just your macros. Again, we have to make sure these are in place. And this is why I have a huge focus on the health side of things, because I think this is overlooked in too many programs. And so again, this is why we do that. So, if you have any questions on this, or again, you have any questions on figuring out what your kind of limiting factors are, you can always reach out to me on Instagram, Jeff. But I do have my doors open for my body recomp blueprint program. Now, this will be running till the end of the month, the end of January. So if you are interested in it, you can either fill out the link in the show notes to set up a free call to chat about it, or reach out to me on Instagram, Jeff, HOEHN_, shoot me over a message, body recomp blueprint, and we can talk about it in more detail. So hopefully this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions on this, and I'll chat with you next time.